right, here we go. What we're going to talk about tonight is whether or not the Earth is flat. Here comes somebody we're going to call John, and John prefers to remain anonymous. He believes the Earth is flat. He has several business clients who might not be ready to have a ball Earth skeptic as a strategic consultant. John is in no way ashamed to be a ball Earth skeptic. However, being a ball Earth skeptic does not pay the bills, says he. His business clients do, and he hopes the listeners can accept this. I can. Other people in the world would only have a glimpse of who John is based on his videos, posts, and interviews. He says, my statements speak for themselves. We'll see about that. And you get a full view of my take on the flat Earth / infinite plane models on my YouTube channel, The Morgile. That's The Morgile, Morgile. So he is to be met by somebody operating way, I think, below his pay grade, but we're very honored to have him here tonight. He is a professor, actually. All right. Dr. Josh Grindlay. Now, listen to a little bit of this if you don't think he's going to be operating below pay grade. Research interests. Compact objects and binaries in globular clusters and the origin and evolution of compact X-ray binaries. Good Lord, accretion into white dwarfs, neutron stars, and black holes. Development of a balloon-borne hard X-ray imaging telescope and future space missions for hard X-ray observations of X-ray binaries and quasars. Good Lord. He's published over 500 papers. He definitely thinks the Earth is round, by the way. Well, or oval, whatever, but not flat. National service, numerous advisory committees for NASA, NRC, and NSF. Chair of Division of High Energy Astrophysics, holy moly, American Astronomical Society, Division of Astrophysics, American Physical Society, honors, a fellow American P. Sloan Foundation, fellow American Physical Society, fellow American Association for Advancement of Science, fellow Guggenheim Foundation, and so forth. So he's a big heavyweight. So I want to welcome both of these gentlemen and hope they're there. John, are you here?
I am here.
Good.
Can you
all
hear
right.
me?
All right. Yeah, I hear you. And Dr. Grindlay.
I'm here too.
Excellent. Okay. I hear a little bit of hum or something. So somebody's turning something off or changing something. Don't do that. Leave it on. All right. So, John, look, you gave us so many points that you're going to have to work with me, John, and we're going to have to sort of take these one at a time. I've got them boiled down a little bit. So can we do that? Take them one at a time? Why you think the Earth is flat?
Sure. Yeah, if that's the way that you want to do it, we can do it however you want to.
Well,
it's your show, and
right.
First I want to say I'm a big fan, long-time listener, love your stuff.
Thank you. All right. So let us do that then in the interest of time, because the doctor can only be with us. He's on the East Coast. We've got him at best a couple of hours. So if you both will hold on, what we'll do is we'll get our break out of the way, and then we'll come back and we'll dive directly into this sort of point by point, if that'd be all right, John. That's kind of the way I want to do it. John is here along with Dr. Josh Grindlay. Again, I maintain operating way below his pay grade, but that's okay. We'll proceed with this and kind of go point by point. So, John, if you're there, I'm going to skip the first two and go directly to, we have a gazillion pictures of Earth from space. Or we should have, I guess. Why don't we have a gazillion pictures of Earth from space? Instead, we have just one. And you add its brand new one that's obviously fake. And I guess, what are you saying, John, that the picture of Earth from space looks flat?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
Okay.
And I think at first, if we skip the first 2 points, that's kind of doing injustice to the argument. But if we can loop back to those or whatever, I think they are important points to make. All right.
Well, all right. Real quick then. When was the last time you skeptically scrutinized the globe model? Is that your first one? I don't know. I've got a globe at home. I scrutinize it all the time because I've traveled around it about 3 times. So I don't know. I'm pretty familiar. How about you, Doctor?
Well, I don't think there's much doubt that the globe is spherical. We've got lots of pictures of it. We've all traveled around it. I've been around it many times. I have friends who've been in orbit. I haven't, but I would love to do that sometime.
Boy, me too.
You can go around it in 90 minutes. So I think this whole debate is
silly,
is quite amusing, but I'm happy to be part of it.
All right, John, a response?
Absolutely, and I think there may be some clarification needed on the term scrutinized or skeptically reviewed the globe model, because there are a lot of things that seem to make the Earth seem like a globe, but at the same time, isn't it possible that we were all sort of taught all of these quote unquote truths and known facts about the globe when we were just very small children?
But John, you're talking to 2 people, myself and the doctor, who have been around the world several times. It's kind of like we have in fact, I went up in the Concorde on the way to Paris, the supersonic plane when we had it. And
Sure.
at 68,000 feet, I promise you, John, tain't flat.
Well, John,
So-
there was a nice view of the curved horizon of the Earth about a year ago when that fellow jumped out of a balloon 130,000 feet above New Mexico.
That's right.
Beautiful pictures.
With the fisheye lens, right?
No, it wasn't a fisheye lens.
No, actually, it was a GoPro fisheye lens, which makes all the all straight lines appear curved. And
Well, I don't
if
think
you're
it was, John.
if you're in the Concorde, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you're in the Concorde and you see the totally flat horizon, which is an equidistant circle all around you, as altitude is gained, the horizon level never drops. So if we did live on a globe, the higher and higher you went in altitude, and the further and further your field of vision goes, your angle of attack on the horizon is going to get wider and wider as altitude is gained. But if we did live on a sphere, then it should drop lower and lower the further away you can look. And actually, that's measurable, and we can measure that.
John, that's exactly what was observed by the Apollo astronauts in 1969 as they left Earth. They saw the globe get smaller and smaller, drop farther and farther away below them. How are you going to respond to that, John?
The Apollo astronauts, I'm sorry to say, and I was raised.
That's right. You think it's all in a movie lot somewhere? Was that?
No,
it wasn't real. Is that it, John?
What I'm telling you is the Apollo missions were demonstrably false.
Oh, I see.
Gee.
Okay. All of the rocks were clearly manufactured in some.
Well, no, I mean
somewhere.
even by standard science. Okay, so you have these radiation barriers about 1,000 or 3,000 miles above the surface called the Van Allen radiation belts.
Yes, I'm very familiar with those, John.
Okay. Yeah, they had just been discovered, and they were still being sort of scrutinized and debated when the Apollo missions were launched. And so, you could argue that it's irresponsible of NASA that they didn't include any sort of radiation shielding, because Van Allen did warn them about the radiation.
Okay, we're off on
missions.
we're off on a tangent here a little bit.
We are, yeah, but I think John is denying the physical evidence. That's the trouble with his theory. It doesn't conform to fact.
No,
in other words,
NASA.
Then it becomes all gimmickry and fakery, and so there was no Apollo. It was all done in a movie lot. John, that scam has been proposed long ago, but it's a very rare group of people that still subscribe to it. I'm surprised that you do.
NASA is a pack of liars that was founded by Freemasons.
Freemasons.
And Nazis.
Oh my goodness!
All right, let's try.
Art, I don't know. I don't think this debate is going to be very useful when we have such biased views and such lack of comprehension of simple facts and figures.
Maybe
how are you going to respond
here,
to the fact that Columbus was aware the Earth was round? He watched masts of ships appear before the ships appeared. That's what happens on a spherical globe, John.
That's a
good one.
fallacy.
Oh, good one.
That is a fallacy. We have excellent.
No,
it's
a
not.
fallacy. It's observed fact. Go out on a boat and you'll see it for yourself.
Obviously,
Actually,
they're going to see the mast first, John. Of course they are.
the old wives' tale is that when a ship travels away from you, as it goes beyond the horizon, you're supposed to be able to see the bottom sort of travel away from you last. But if you actually look at a ship that travels beyond the horizon with a telescope, you'll see that it is actually just perfectly perpendicular to the horizon. It just sort of seems to go behind the horizon because that's how the laws of perspective work.
No, John. No. You see the mast
Have you
disappear
looked at
last.
the pictures or the videos, Doctor?
I've seen this myself. It's obvious. Have you been out at sea on a boat? Flat, nice, calm sea with no waves.
I have indeed, and
Uh-huh.
when I've been out many times, and when I was young, I remember saying, "Wow, you can see the curve of the Earth out here on the ocean," but what you're seeing is an equidistant circle around you, because that's how perspective works. That's how the
No,
horizon.
John, I don't. I'm afraid you don't understand geometry. This is very simple
No,
spherical geometry, plane
sphere-
geometry,
okay.
understood by the Greeks 2,000 years ago.
We can get into spherical geometry if you want to do that.
No,
Oh,
I
I'd
don't,
be
I don't want
happy to. But I think let's hear some more.
Yeah, we've got so many
facts,
points here. Let's do them
make-
one at a time. All right. For example, how can we see vertical, perpendicular buildings from over 50 miles away? They ought to be a quarter mile below the horizon.
That's correct. And we don't see the bottom of those buildings 50 miles away.
That's right.
We don't see the bottom of the buildings, Doctor, but that's because of the laws of perspective.
The
No,
laws?
it's not. It's
What?
not. Perspective has nothing to do with it.
Doctor, with all due respect, perspective has everything to do with it. The curvature of the Earth, you can measure it simply by it's eight inches times the mile squared, and that's how much drop should occur every mile away from the observer's eye. So it's 8 inches per mile squared. So if it's 1 mile, it's simply an 8-inch drop. And if it's 2 miles, the mile squared, so it's 4 times 8 inches, which is a 32-inch drop. At 3 miles, it's 9 times 8, that's 72-inch drop. And when you get out to 50 miles, those buildings should be based a full quarter mile below the horizon, and they should be angled away from your perspective. But instead, we can see them perpendicular to the horizon, perfectly vertical, perfectly visible from well over 50 miles away.
John, that's because we have topography on the surface of the globe. We're not living on a ball bearing, in case you haven't noticed.
So you're saying that the
You
water
look out
has
at a city
mountains in
50
it?
miles away, of course you're not seeing the curvature of the earth, you're seeing the topography of the land.
With all due respect, Doctor, I think it's high time that you apply some rational skepticism towards
No,
the model.
I'm perfectly rational. That's what science is all about.
All right.
If you
Sir,
go back
you-
to the ocean and the mast disappearing last, you have precisely what we're talking about. It has nothing to do with perspective.
You're actually, if you look at the videos, there's video evidence. There's plenty of it. You're wrong. That's a wives' tale. That's not
No,
what
no,
happened.
Does
Simple-
everything
simple
come down
observed
to
fact.
perspective? Is
Of
every
course.
argument going to come down to perspective?
Yeah,
Well,
I'd like
in fact,
to hear
that's right.
perspective defined here. This is a very interesting use of the word perspective, which has nothing to
Okay.
do with spherical problem.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Perspective works on a flat plane. The further away from you objects travel, the smaller and smaller they appear to get. Agreed?
That's for a fixed finite size. Yes, of course. That's nothing more than the angular size that you're talking about.
Okay. So what happens to that object when it gets beyond the vanishing point? On a flat plane.
There's no vanishing point. If you have to understand some physics here, John. It doesn't just vanish. Objects will get smaller and smaller, as you just said. They'll become very, very small, but then you don't resolve them any longer because something called diffraction prevents you from resolving them.
Doctor, with all
with
due
your eyes
respect,
or with the
I would-
telescope.
with all due
Okay,
respect, I
John,
would-
John. With all due respect, we've got only so much time.
Okay.
Here's another
I think
point.
we're getting off the subject here.
Yeah, how can a westbound flight, John says, from New York to Los Angeles have identical duration on a globe spinning about 1,000 miles per hour east with its return flight?
John, everybody on the globe is spinning together, including the airplane that's flying above the globe. So there's the answer to your question. Okay,
So,
we're not.
everybody, So we're all okay. So
We're all
even
moving. That's right. On the equator, we're all moving 1,000 miles an hour. Isn't that
uh-huh,
remarkable?
that
Why
is
aren't we being
remarkable.
thrown off? Is probably what you're wondering.
Now, Doctor, let me ask you a question. What about when the jet engines propel the plane westward? Do you
Hmm.
agree? Do you agree that the plane should be traveling in the opposite direction as the spin of the Earth?
Yes, it's the spin of the Earth is the whole frame of reference that
It's the
has
whole
nothing
frame
to
of
do with
reference,
the
but
object.
doctor, objects moving in opposite directions have a much higher relative difference in speed than objects moving in the same direction. So an eastbound flight should be a much longer flight than a westbound flight, shouldn't it, doctor? Since the world is supposedly spinning towards the east?
That's correct, but there is something that you may have noticed. It's called wind and weather, which is what makes the difference between eastbound and westbound flights. It's the circulation of the atmosphere that the plane is flying through.
Mm-hmm.
Jet
But
stream
the
too.
plane is flying over the Earth as a fixed frame of reference, which is indeed rotating, but so is the plane. So there's no relative motion relative to the spin of the Earth.
There's no relative motion relative to the spin of the Earth. So
That is correct.
you're arguing that objects traveling in opposite directions don't have a higher relative difference in speed than objects
No,
traveling in the same direction.
here, John, look, you're getting mixed up here. When
No,
the
sir,
plane
you
takes
are
off
mixed
from
up.
New York, it is on a spinning platform, and whether it's going east or west, it always has that angular velocity that it had when it left the airport.
Always with all
Always.
the
Okay.
okay. So
And that
you know,
has nothing to do with its velocity relative to the ground. That's
the
the frame
laws
of
of
reference.
motion state that an object in motion will tend to maintain its velocity until enacted upon by some other force. And with all due respect, Doctor, don't you consider several jet engines attached to a plane some other force?
That's what's propelling the plane over the Earth, the surface of the Earth. That's the frame of reference that we've just
The,
defined.
the
So
problem
the
is not the
fact that the
frame of
Earth is
reference.
spinning has nothing to do with the motion of the
The,
plane from New
the
York to LA.
problem is that you are incapable of even theorizing that our world is
No,
anything
no,
but a
I can
spinning globe.
fully understand what our globe is
No,
doing.
John, let
All
him.
the
John,
time.
let him finish.
okay, I'm sorry.
No,
Doctor.
I've just repeated the same point several times, but I don't think John is quite understanding that there is a frame of reference that the plane has taken off from. And when it lands in wherever it's going, it's on that still in that same frame of reference. We could expand this if you like, John. It's not just that the Earth is spinning, we're moving around the sun at an enormous velocity, 30 kilometers per second.
All of us.
Yep.
Okay, that makes the spin of the Earth look trivial. But again, that has nothing to do with the motion of the plane in flight from
Now,
A to
I
B.
I think that we've sort
You're
of
using relative velocities because you're making it as if the plane were flying in a frame of reference that was the ether, as it used to be called, before we understood what space was all about. And that's not what's going on here. The plane has taken off from a point on the solid Earth. You would like it to be flat, but of course it's demonstrably round. But that has nothing to do with your misconception about relative velocities.
no, it has nothing to do with relative velocity, sir. It
Well,
has
that's
to
what you're
do.
trying to say. You're saying if I'm flying east, I'm flying faster than I'm flying.
It has
west.
to do. Okay, so if you're driving down the highway and you're going 65 miles an hour down the highway, and the car coming towards you is going 65
No,
miles
no,
an hour.
that's what we mean by relative velocities. But that's where you're wrong, John. Because
No, that's where you're wrong, sir.
well, John, this is getting to be slightly ridiculous.
It is. You're right because see, I grew up on planet Earth and I am fully aware of the globe model and all of the reasoning behind it. But see, the difficult thing is to have even a very intelligent person such as yourself even consider for just a scientific theory, just for a little bit of like a mind experiment to even sit down for a minute and theorize. Maybe the world is flat and stationary, and I think flat Earth is a bad word for it because it implies that infinite space is somehow true. That's not the model whatsoever. We're not, a disk floating around in space, if that's what most people want to think. The model that I subscribe to is an infinite plane model, where basically the sun has carved out a puddle while traveling around the magnetic center, which is fixed on our North Pole. And what you know as the Antarctic is actually the boundaries, the outer edge of the dartboard. essentially.
Well, okay, John, if we don't want to talk about relative motion, because I think we're not getting very far in that, because you haven't understood what I've been saying, let's
No,
talk
you
about
haven't
your model
understood
for
what I've
the
been saying. I
sun.
know exactly. I've
All
heard
right,
the
hold on.
argument that you've
Hold
made.
on.
No,
Hold
I
on,
would
John.
love to hear more about your model for the sun. That's very interesting. So what? So the sun is this magical thing that is circling around the Earth. What powers this thing? It's not obviously something that we normally think of as the sun
Well,
and a star.
that's a good question, but it's
So is this all
obviously
some mysterious source of energy that can circle around the plane, the infinite plane that we're living on?
it's no more mysterious than gravity, but I believe it's some type of magnetic anomaly. There are lots of
Interesting.
different theories, but I think a lot more study and scrutiny needs to go into it because, believe it or not, it has been irrefutably proved that our world is indeed flat and stationary,
Well,
not a spinning globe.
that's
And
remarkable because it's contradicting all the evidence we've just been talking about. But the sun makes a very interesting way of testing your model because this magnetic anomaly, as you call it, must be some very peculiar source of energy that we've never even considered before. Is that what you would subscribe to?
well,
And all those
there's
little
a lot of
pinpoints of light we see in the sky that we call stars, are those just anything like the sun, or are those other magnetic anomalies, or whatever this theory of yours happen to be?
That's a good question, and until we fly up there and see, I don't think anybody really knows. Sure, we can look at the light and we can theorize that the sun is 93 million miles away, but really the same mathematics that's used to prove the sun is 93 million miles away can actually be used to prove that the sun's about 3,000 miles away. And is a
Oh
lot
my
No.
goodness, John! All right, well, that's a
wait,
great
let's
place
go
to break. No, we got to break. We got to break. And that the sun, for your model to be true, has to be. Did you say 3,000 miles away, John?
Yeah, that's correct. That's about 3,000 miles away. That's right. And we can prove this using Euclidean geometry. It's a fairly standard experiment where essentially you measure the angles of the shadow cast by the sun at high noon at multiple points with miles in between each point on the same meridian.
John, I was going to mention that our astronauts went to the moon, which is 250,000 miles away, but I'm sure you're going to come back with, no, they didn't, it was fake. Right?
No, nobody's. The astronauts never went to the moon. That was all a film. The Apollo missions were films designed to trick the generation, you guys' generation, into believing in a lie.
Well, John, that's really disappointing to hear you say that. I know others have said that, but I'm surprised that a guy of your age, I don't know how old you are, but that you would subscribe to this.
I'm too, Doctor. The
what
fact
about
that
all that real live hardware, just all an elaborate fake, I guess, huh? And rockets
not that
taking
elaborate.
off and-
Doctor, let me ask the doctor a question. Look, John is a bright guy.
I'm sure he is. Yeah, but that's why I'm really surprised that you can just get so far down the wrong track, John, in thinking about simple geometric concepts. Let's go back to the sun, because I think this is fascinating what you're suggesting. If the sun were 3,000 miles away, have you worked out the power that the sun would have to have, this magnetic anomaly? What produces light and something that is only 3,000 miles away to illuminate the whole Earth and produce our climate? I assume you're not questioning that the distance from New York to LA is 3,000 miles. So you've got the sun about as far away from you, wherever you are right now. I don't know where you are, it doesn't matter, as New York and LA are. So
surely you can't believe that, John, do you?
This is amazing. How do you get?
It's actually. I mean, it's mathematically proved. I mean, if you would have let me finish, the standard experiment that's done by colleges all over the world, the default answer will always be 3,000 miles away to the sun using that Euclidean geometry. Only by adding a layer of complexity into the equation and assuming that we live on a sphere with a circumference of 25,000 miles, then do you get the nonsensical answer of 93 million miles away.
So, John, let's pursue the 3,000 miles, because this is really interesting. If it were 3,000 miles, it has to be above us to cast light down onto us. How do I get daylight in Chicago and San Francisco and New York all at the same time? If the sun were only 3,000 miles up,
Sure.
there would be a much larger
Well, first off,
diurnal effect.
That's a good point.
And it's
Much more than 3 time zones away. So it doesn't work, John.
Yeah, it's a good question, and the reason is, see, you're still thinking of the Earth as a globe. You have to.
No. I'm letting it be flat now. So
Okay,
that
well,
makes it even worse
yeah.
when it's flat.
No. Well, then you're misunderstanding though. You got to understand the North Pole is in the center of the dartboard. Okay, and then the next ring out on the dartboard is the northern hemisphere. And then the next ring out on the dartboard is the southern hemisphere. Now, first of all, and this is admitted, all of the maps that we have are all wrong. You can fit Canada twice in the length of Russia, so all of the relative sizes are wrong on the maps anyways. So it's really...
So that means if I were walking from A to B, all those maps being wrong, I could get there much faster or much longer than my map would have told me. Is that what you're saying?
No, well, the maps still work because, like, okay, you can walk
They're
around,
wrong, but they still work. Okay.
No, you're twisting my words. The reason that the maps are inaccurate is because they're assuming that the Earth is a globe when taking the measurements and measuring the relative differences in sizes of the continents. But you have to study the model. I mean, I wish you would at least study the flat Earth model before assuming that it's
I think it would be fascinating to study because I've already pointed out to you here, and I'm not sure you've been following what I'm saying, that what your model is suggesting is already self-contradictory. We can't have the same 3-hour time difference between New York and LA if my light bulb, the sun, is only 3,000 miles above them on a flat plane.
Right.
That doesn't work, John.
Well, no, that's how it works, and you have to understand it's when the light from the sun comes through the atmosphere, it does sort of have like a shotgun effect. So essentially, roughly half of the Earth is lit at any time by the sun, and the further it gets away from your perspective and it goes behind the horizon, it goes a lot further, to get behind the horizon because it's on a much higher plane.
Why is there a horizon? The sun is 3,000 miles up, but it's a flat plane, so I can be 10,000 miles away in my flat plane. You haven't told me how big the plane is, but I can be 10,000 miles away and the sun is not behind any horizon. So
well,
how are you going to make that work?
if you go and study weather balloon footage, I don't know if you've ever looked at.
I know all about balloons, John. I launched them to 40 miles up. Every time you see the sun in those, every time you see the sun in the weather balloon footage, it'll just be a few degrees above the horizon. Which and there's a few other. Not true, John. Sun can be straight overhead. I can show you pictures from our own balloon-borne telescopes.
Okay, well then it's straight up.
Yeah, he actually launches. He actually launches balloons. So listen to
that.
But
it's not 90.
Well, I don't launch them. NASA launches them.
Well, yeah.
But of course, I think John thinks that this is all a fake or contrived operation. We put balloons 40 miles above the Earth, John, with telescopes on them. We do real astronomy, astrophysics. And so all the things you're talking about are simply not the case. I haven't been up in the balloon myself, but I've had my experiment and telescopes and detectors and images, just like the guy that jumped out of the balloon with that. You're accusing him with a fisheye lens to somehow have made it all a fake shot that the Earth was curved.
If the horizon appears as a curve from that distance without a fisheye lens, again, it's because it's an equidistant circle around you.
Well, John, these were regular cameras that this guy used, and they weren't fisheye lenses. He wasn't trying to take the picture of the whole globe, so there was no distortion in those cameras.
Granted, and the reason that it looks like or appears as a curve is because the horizon will always be an equidistant circle around you at that altitude.
Well, that's, I guess, your model, but we have that's this contradictory direct measurement data. We can measure distances. We don't have to imagine what they are on some map. We can measure distances precisely. Radar does that, as you certainly know. So we know what shapes and distances of things are. So there's no ambiguity.
There's no curvature.
You could not fake this. You simply couldn't fake it.
The science, John, the science about the sun is good, hard, settled science.
No, it isn't.
All of this is hard, settled science, Art, including going to the moon. We have enormous amounts of data.
We don't want to get stuck there. He'll take us somewhere we don't want to go.
Well, anybody who believes we went to the moon believes in a TV series that was false. We're going to have to agree to disagree on that.
Yes,
John,
let's do that.
Tell me about this. This wonderful, exciting news of NASA's mission to Pluto a few weeks back. Is that all just a big sideshow as well?
Sure. Why not? How much money are
Oh.
they going to get to make that movie?
Oh,
Money. So who's making money on these movies, John? I mean, this is amazing.
I don't know. Are you? Are you? I don't know.
No, no, certainly not me, and certainly not NASA. NASA is NASA is not making money in anything. It's doing pure science. This is what gets into
Pure
textbooks.
science.
This is what you should be,
they're scratching for a budget.
John, this is what you should have taken back. I don't know.
All of NASA's stuff is photoshopped images.
Oh,
Oh my
There's-
goodness, John.
They might have some stuff from Hubble that's pictures of the stars, but
So let's do Hubble for a second.
yeah,
I want to
good.
hear about Hubble.
Hubble.
So we got this beautiful telescope up there, except it's not above a globe; it's above this flat plane. How does it getting those gorgeous pictures? Things that we couldn't even imagine. Are those all photoshopped as well?
and you know it's amazing that science, and you can prove I can prove to you that the Earth has no curvature, and I can prove to you that
Wait
the
a
Earth
minute.
is
What-
stationary.
So
But
far
the
you
pretty
haven't done
pictures-
too well. on
John,
the
you're
proof
not
part.
responding.
The pretty pictures
You're
trump
not-
science.
yes.
So yeah,
You're not
Pretty
responding.
So
The Hubble.
the Hubble stuff is just all just fluffy, pretty pictures and no science. Is that it?
they are definitely pretty pictures.
They are, but I mean, do they have any reality, or is this just again?
Well,
some
have you
Photoshop?
a guy named Matt Boylan was actually a subcontractor for NASA. He did a lot of realistic art of like hypothetical alien worlds with predefined lighting scenarios with mock celestial events, and
Yeah.
so he was one of the people that actually broke the story that NASA was basically faking just about
Oh
everything.
my goodness, John!
So are you
That's really
suggesting
sad
the
to hear you
Hubble?
say that?
Are you saying the
So
Hubble?
Mr.
photo-
Howard,
Hold
so
it,
Mr.
John.
Howard,
Beautiful
sad
depictions
now.
of the universe, and you're saying, and this guy, this space artist, I like space art, by the way. I'm a science fiction fan.
But you're saying that
Yeah, this is so
whistleblowers
much
are
better
sad?
than fiction, John. This is the real thing out there. These gorgeous images of galaxies,
Yep.
a gazillion light years away,
And that trumps the measurable fact that the Earth is flat and stationary. The pretty pictures.
well, it doesn't trump anything, John. This is reality. This is the world we live in.
It is
This is the
reality.
world that the Greeks understood 2,000 years ago. You're just
Well, they theorized it 2,000 years
no,
ago.
John, they didn't. Do you know the experiment the Greeks did in a well between Cyrene in northern Egypt and what we would now call Cairo? But they measured the diameter of the Earth and proved it was round by simultaneously, amazing they could do this, measuring the depth of a sunbeam into a well on two different points on a meridian. So just think of it
And
as
that's
being
why we
straight
can
north-south.
that's why we can go 40 miles into the air with a weather balloon, and there's no curvature of the horizon.
John, the Greeks proved there was curvature, and they measured the diameter of the Earth.
We can see
They
it with
did
our
this
own
in
eyes, sir.
400 BC.
You're failing to see what's right in front of you because you cannot imagine our world as anything but
I can imagine what you're talking about, and
No,
I
you
just
had-
have trouble taking it seriously because it's so demonstrably false, and
and I'll
you're
tell
refusing
you.
to listen to fact.
No, well, look, hang on a second, and I'll tell you. 6 months ago, I would have agreed with you that our world is a globe spinning around the sun, and if you would have mentioned the word flat Earth, I would have laughed and gone about my business.
Okay,
and
there.
never
Do
gave
you
it a
have an
second.
accident?
Okay.
Did something happen?
Did
Yeah,
something happen? Yeah,
Yes.
I looked at the evidence and I scrutinized it in both models, and I found that the only one logical, correct answer is the infinite plane model. And I'm sorry, it sounds crazy. You haven't given it enough thought yet, but I'm telling you that it's the truth.
No, it's fascinating, John, to hear your reasoning. But tell me, I'm really curious. What was it? I guess this is what Art was asking. How is it that all of a sudden, after how many years you've been, aware of your everyday surroundings, which I'm sure you've always been, what was it that all of a sudden tipped the scales? And just 6 months ago, you gave up on this thing
Well,
that
I was- yeah.
second nature to everyone, that we're on a globe, and it became flat.
Well, and the reason it's second nature to us is because it's drilled into our minds since our very first day at school. You learn 1 + 1 is 2, and the world is a globe. I mean, that's how early they get you with the propaganda. And to answer your question, what happened was I was simply compelled to look at the evidence. And I think it's high time that the rational, skeptical scientists of the world take a little time to just rationally, skeptically look at the globe, which is something that you have not done since you were.
No, John. That's where I beg to differ. I've done this. All of us have done that. You're absolutely right. We should look skeptically at our surroundings, and we should rely on pure measurement and observation and not make assumptions. And if you follow that course, that's what science is all about.
Okay.
You would be forced to conclude, John, there's absolutely no alternative, that we are indeed on a globe, that our globe is spinning, that our globe is not only spinning, it's orbiting the sun. Ptolemy went through all this. Ptolemy, of course, had this Earth-centric view.
And see,
Copernicus came along and understood that it was just
and that is exactly why that is exactly
heliocentric view, and we've been on that course ever since. All of the misconceptions and things that didn't quite fit in the Ptolemaic view of what our solar system is all about, which was a much, much simpler thing to understand. We had no clue that there were galaxies and everything else going on until the 1920s. So this is the last several hundred years, 500 years, 400 years since Copernicus, when all of this revolution has taken place, but right up through the last 50 years. So you're doing the right thing to be skeptical, but this is exactly what science has done.
Doctor, have you eread Zetetic Astronomy by Dr. Robotham?
No, I'm afraid I haven't read that.
Well, you ought to read it because there's a lot of great proof. And you want to talk about science. Okay, let's talk about the North Star Polaris. How does the North Star Polaris maintain its alignment? And, people say it's hundreds of years, or some people say it's thousands of years. Some people say, oh, well, it changed once. But the point is...
No. Can I just jump in here?
Sure.
Polaris does not maintain its alignment. The Earth is a spinning top, and if you remember as a kid playing with the top on a tabletop, you pull the string and it spins and it's kind of stationary, and then it starts to wobble. Remember how that worked? It wobbles, and then eventually the top falls over on your desk or tabletop. That's exactly what the Earth is doing. It's a spinning gyroscope, and because it's spinning, it's wobbling, it's precessing, we call it. The reason it's doing that is because the moon is producing a gravitational pull on the Earth.
Wait a minute.
This is simple physics.
The North Star Polaris?
So the North Star doesn't always stay over the North Pole. It's moving on a circle, and it moves around every 26,000 years.
No. Okay.
No, it does, John.
You're talking about the precession of the equinoxes, but
that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's what makes the North Star no longer the North Star. The ancient Egyptians didn't have a North Star to line up north on building the Great Pyramids. The North Star was way off. Polaris, rather, the star was there, of course, but it was no longer lined up with the spin axis of the Earth. All of this is well known.
So you were around back then.
We know exactly where Polaris was 5,000 years ago too.
You do? Okay.
Yes, we do.
Just like you know the Earth is a globe. Okay.
No, John. The difference is I can measure it. I can measure where Polaris was.
But you can't measure that there's no curvature.
And I can measure that there is curvature.
There is
so
no
can you
curvature.
if you go out in an airplane and measure distances on your so-called flat plane. They won't be consistent with a flat plane because it's not a flat plane. It's a spherical globe.
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
I want to ask a question.
Sure.
When you fly,
I'm running out of time here, Art, but let's have a few more questions.
all right.
I guess.
Well, this is my question. When you fly from Los Angeles to, let us say, Hong Kong, and you measure the distance, that we can do scientifically. I hope John believes we can do that scientifically. Do you, John?
Well, of course you can measure distance.
Okay, and if you take the Great Circle route to get there, it's not as far. How come?
The Great Circle.
Yeah. In other words, if you go north and then around, as if it's a globe, a ball.
Well, because you got to understand the flat Earth is sort of like the globe model, but it's wrapped around the North Pole. You have to study the model to understand it. You're trying to apply globe model laws and maps to the flat Earth map. Yes, you got to understand.
I'm just talking mileage here.
Mileage, okay. Yeah. Well, then how can you explain that you can fit the Canada twice into the length of Russia on the standard maps?
I don't know. I'm asking you a question and you're responding with another question.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the point. I mean, you can't go by the maps that you're looking at because they're inaccurate.
Well, John, they can be confirmed by going out. If you wanted to go out with a ruler stick, you can measure what your map should be telling you. That's the way maps are constructed. you probably know all about GPS. I don't know if you have a cell phone, but that's what tells you where you are, again, on the surface of a globe.
Are you
If
familiar with
if
Nikola?
your
Are
theory
you
were
familiar
right
with
and you're
Nikola
living on
Tesla's
this
tower?
distorted flat plane, GPS wouldn't work. Nothing would work.
Are you familiar with Nikola Tesla's towers that he invented? I think it was like what, in the 20s or 30s or whatever, where it was basically wireless communications.
John,
and
you're
Yes,
doing
of
it
course I'm
again.
familiar
A
with that.
question.
And that's where radio communication began. That's
Yeah.
precisely what's used to
Triangulation.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I know. I know.
Cell phone towers.
Yes, of course, John. That's exactly what we're talking about. But the
We don't even. Why would
coordinates
we
are
need
given.
satellites if we can bounce radio waves off the ionosphere anyway?
Oh, you know what,
John? No,
gentlemen,
you're
gentlemen,
way off
doctor,
there.
hold tight.
We
We're
begin
at
to
a
have
break.
Precise positions that way.
I have to break.
The
I have to
ionosphere
break.
disturbs the signal to begin with.
Hold it right there, gentlemen. I have to break. This is radio. John says, how can the upper atmosphere be adjacent to the vacuum of outer space?
Gravity, John. Gravity pulls the atmosphere, keeps it on this round globe. Why is it round? Because that's the equilibrium shape that a mass must assume. That's why stars are round, spherical. They're not pancakes. So all of this we understand, John. But again, I'm not trying to sound like I'm belittling. I hope I don't convey that. I'm trying to convince you, John, that you ought to lighten up here and understand what the whole world of science has arrived at, not just recently, but over hundreds of years, and with such incredible discovery in the last decade or two. Those Hubble images we were talking about. I could also talk about X-ray images that we have from the Chandra telescope.
Gravity, and you got gravity,
and you think they're all fake. This is just so discouraging.
Well, everything that does seem to be proof, Doctor, you're right, seems to be then judged to be fake by John. And John sounds like such a bright guy that I just can't figure how he obviously believes this.
That's why I was asking what happened 6 months ago. I mean, it's great to have a moment of truth and say, my God, what is the world I'm living in? That's fine. I'm all in favor of that. But to deny rational thinking and thousands of years, beginning with the Greeks, who I keep coming back to, they're so amazing what the Greeks did. But all of modern science, and you've got it all cooked up to be a giant hoax. It's just
so you say that it's the magic of gravity that keeps the atmosphere.
Not magic. There's no magic of gravity at all. Isaac Newton taught us what gravity is, and we now understand it in
Isaac Newton's
glorious detail.
Okay, hold on. Now, first of all, gravity was theorized in order to account for the fact that we're not flung from the spinning Earth at 1,000 miles per hour towards the east near the equator. Okay, gravity is a theory to prove the globe model. Now, you're also saying that.
John, what do you suppose keeps you, sitting in your chair instead of floating off if there's no gravity? I mean,
well, there's no need. There's no need for gravity on the flat, stationary Earth that we dwell on.
I see.
We're not spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, so you don't have to account for that outward thrust generated by the spin.
Okay.
It's the simple laws of density or buoyancy that causes, heavier, denser objects to find their way down and lighter, less dense objects to find their way up. It's the natural order of things, and there's no need for gravity to explain the law of physics. What goes up must comes down on the flat.
Oh, really? Well, then, I mean, why do things come down? If I throw a ball in the air, why does it have to come down? Something's pulling it down, John.
Well, it's more than likely, sir. It's electromagnetic, but gravity has never been proved, sir. It is a theory.
Oh, gravity's been proved time and time again, and
no,
of course
sir.
It began with Newton.
No, sir.
We're on the verge, John. If you don't like the proofs of gravity so far, in probably the next 5 years, there will be a very major discovery that will come from astrophysics, but from physics really, and that is of waves of gravity, gravitational waves, which
that have never ever been detected, even though
that's right. But there now is an enormous big telescope in the state of Washington, and another one in Louisiana, and another one in Italy, and in Europe, and those gigantic gravitational wave telescopes are now almost sensitive enough to detect the gravitational wave sources that we have proven are out there.
Gravity is a theoretical fantasy that was
Woof.
dreamed up by
Well,
proponents
John,
of the
I
globe
don't,
model.
I don't think that's what anybody else but you and your colleagues and your
No, that is what it is. That's what gravity
view
is.
of nature was
Gravity was gravity was a theory designed or theorized to explain the globe model and why we're not flung from the face.
No, that's not what gravity was designed to do at all. It was
No,
designed
that
to explain the fact that objects fall. That has nothing to do with the globe model.
Okay, then what is
There was
keeping
no
us
need
pinned?
for a
Then
globe.
what is keeping us pinned to the Earth while we're spinning 1,000 miles per hour near the
The
equator?
mass of the Earth, John. That's what
mass of
gravity
the Earth.
is due to. It is, yes, because the Earth is
No.
not a flat plane. It is a
Gravity,
mass that weighs.
Gravity is supposedly due to the mass of the Earth warping space-time.
No,
and space-time
John.
came back down.
No.
You're getting confused. You're jumping ahead to Einstein. Warping space-time has nothing whatsoever to do with the Earth's gravity. It's a very teeny tiny effect, barely measurable. Measurable. It's been measured. It's not that tiny. But Newton, of course, had no conception of this. It was 300 years until Einstein told us and instructed us in his brilliant way about the warping of space and time. But that we haven't talked about. If we were talking black holes, which is what I normally like to think about, we'd be having fun discussing warped space-time. But gravity on the Earth, no need for any of that. The apple falls from the tree. That's what Newton observed and said, "My God, how could this happen?"
Because
It
the
was to
apple is
understand
denser.
acceleration.
The apple is denser than the air above it, and it's not as dense as the ground below it. So that's where it finds its way to, just like everything else. It's natural. It's the natural order of things.
No, then if that were true, John, then we would have everything. If everything were density dependent, all of our laws of motion would be totally different. Airplanes wouldn't fly. Motors wouldn't work. You're defying everything that's around you.
Airplanes wouldn't fly without gravity, with all due respect. That's ridiculous. Airplanes fly due to barometric, or the pressure beneath the wing being different than the pressure above the wing.
But what I'm saying is that when you're denying gravity and Newton, you're denying all of the physics, the very simple physics that goes with that, which
it's all just theory.
Devices that you are using in your everyday life. You're denying science.
I'm denying a theory that was dreamed up by proponents of the globe model that it's demonstrably false.
Again, the globe model had nothing to do with it. It really didn't.
The globe model had
it was a
everything.
conceptualization that Newton may have used. He didn't have to. It's not.
The only reason you need gravity is to explain the fact that you're not flung from the Earth at 1,000 miles per hour near the equator due to the outward thrust generated by the spin of the Earth. That's what gravity was theorized to defend the globe model,
that's not, John. I'm sorry, you're wrong. That's not what gravity was theorized to deal with.
So you're changing history now.
No. I'm
John. You weren't
history
John.
Understand what Newton did. Read the Principia and understand. Newton was trying to explain acceleration, force, and mass, and gravity was his way of understanding and explaining why we are bound to the ground that we're standing on.
That's a theory.
And why objects fall, and with a certain acceleration. The very simple laws of motion that Newton so brilliantly derived explain to umpteen decimal places why objects move as they do. It's all because of a force, the gravitational force acting on them, that objects are accelerated when they fall at 32 feet per second.
So do you agree that inertia is possibly an electromagnetic force?
No, I don't at all. Inertia has nothing to do with electromagnetic forces. It has to do with the state of matter as a source of mass that has inertia. Force equals mass times acceleration, Newton's famous equation. All of these things have nothing whatsoever to do with the globe of the Earth. They can be generalized to talk about what happens on a globe, but that's not at all.
So so I got this straight. The same gravity that is so weak that keeps me stuck to the Earth, but also keeps the atmosphere from being sucked into the vacuum of space. Okay, that explains it perfectly.
It does. It does.
I was being sarcastic, but okay.
No, I know you were, but it does. It explains it to the T. And it also explains why if you take a steel ball bearing and roll it on a table, and the table is tilted, so it is now accelerated as it's rolling faster and faster. All of that, which has nothing to do with the atmosphere of the Earth or the shape of the Earth,
It's just
only has
conservation
to
of
do with
momentum.
acceleration
All that
and
is.
velocity. All of that is explained by Newton's laws. That's what I'm trying to convince you of.
Well,
There
basic
are understanding of motion.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There are laws like what goes up must come down. I agree that's a law of physics, but I disagree that gravity was
and
is
what
simply a
what the
theory.
source of acceleration is, which is gravity in the case that we're talking about here.
Well, in
So
that
what I'm
theory.
trying to convince you of is that there is a reasoned approach which has been worked out with great minds, the real heroes of science, people like Newton and then Einstein much, much later. And you can't deny these guys. They weren't, it had nothing to do with the Earth being round. Of course, the Earth being a globe, as we know it is, allowed many other things to be explained by the same basic laws of motion, and allowed us to get to the moon and to get a spacecraft out to the planet Pluto. All of that wouldn't have been possible without the physics that has been developed and understood over the last 350 years. So
well, he thinks the whole Pluto mission was, fake anyway. So
I know, but it's really tragic, John, because you're missing out on some really exciting stuff.
So,
It's
Dr.
much
Grinley,
better
do you-
than anybody could have possibly
you-
photoshopped. That's the amazing part of it. What's
Do you
real
agree
in the
that
stuff
if-
NASA's doing is fantastically better than anything.
NASA has been lying to everyone. But anyways, do you agree that even if I was to show you all kinds of irrefutable proof that the Earth was not a spinning globe, that you would agree that you would never change your mind that it was indeed always going to be a spinning globe no matter what?
No, I
Evidence.
only go on the basis of measurement and observation, John. It's not
Really?
It's not.
Okay.
It's not that
Okay.
we're bound to some.
Well, I hope that you live up to that, and only you will know, for the truth of whether you're actually going to live up to that. But if you go by observation and the scientific method, then there's
Yeah.
only one correct answer, and it is not a spinning globe.
Well, John, I'm afraid we're just having a rather pointless argument because you're denying mathematics and fact and
No, I'm
measurement.
not.
Well,
No, I'm not.
you haven't done any of these measurements. You haven't gone out and done the simple tabletop experiments I was talking about, which tell us that the physics
I can tell you about it. So,
is
okay.
all something we understand. And what you're proposing, beginning with your model for the sun, which is the most fantastic thing that has nothing whatsoever to do with physics, magnetic
the
anomalies producing the enormous luminosity of the sun that is keeping us all warm and alive.
Well, the
John,
celestial
this is
bodies, including
totally
the
fanciful thinking that you're
the
doing.
sun and the moon and the stars and the wandering stars, the planets, and the celestial bodies are definitely beautiful and mysterious features of our world. It's not a heliocentric model with an infinite universe.
Well,
the
John,
whole model is wrong.
I'm afraid you've just missed out on the last 500 years of intellectual thought, and it's really a shame. I don't know.
well, either
how else
that
to
or his
say it.
science.
I'm not
maybe
belittling
his
you,
maybe
but,
his science teacher hit him hard.
It's really sad that you just have lost contact with reality.
Well, I'm sorry, sir, but I could say the same thing. It's been irrefutably proved that the Earth is not a spinning globe, but no matter what,
Well,
until you break the programming and simply look at the evidence with an open mind, you will always dwell on a spinning globe. So,
John, an
that's
open
what it is.
mind is looking at data, my friend, pictures,
Yeah.
real measurements, not
Yep.
not this distorted maps with the North Pole at the center and all
And
this
perfectly visible
contrived
buildings from over
This-
50 miles away, and planes that somehow have identical durations traveling east and west
Well,
on a
John, we
globe
went
spinning
through
to
all
the
that.
east.
I-
No, but you went through it and you glossed over it. You didn't.
Oh, I didn't
do
gloss over
anything.
anything, John. You just weren't listening. You weren't
No,
understanding.
you weren't listening. But okay, we'll agree to disagree on that too.
All right. Well, listen,
Well,
I want to
I-
thank you both. I think we've come, unless we can discuss actual points here, we've come to a stop. John wonders how we can see the same stars overhead in the summer, but also in the winter.
And of course, the answer, John, is we don't. Do you think you see the star Vega overhead in the winter, which we see overhead in more or less June and July? No, we don't.
There
Because
are
it's on the opposite side of the sun, John. The sun's in the way.
there are stars that should
There are.
be
Certainly.
totally invisible during the entire winter that we can see overhead in the winter, and we can also see them overhead in the summer. There's no way we could ever see the same stars in the winter and compared to the summer, because the sun would be behind, in between those stars in your eye.
That's exactly why we don't see Vega in the winter. You're
One
saying
star, one star.
no, lots of whole constellations, John.
No,
That's
you don't
what the
understand.
constellations
You should never see any of the same stars in the winter versus summer.
well, it with your model, I guess that's
No, in the false heliocentric model.
John. Look. Do you know the constellation Orion? Let's talk specific here. You know what Orion is? It's a beautiful
I know what Orion
constellation
is.
that's visible in
Of course.
November and December.
Of course.
All right, we don't see that in the spring. Okay, precisely for the reason you're saying, the sun is in the way. It's true for every star in the sky, unless you're close to the poles. We see Polaris all through the year because it's not in the plane of the ecliptic. That's where the spin axis is pointing, so we get to see it as a North
miracles
Star.
of science and pretty pictures, right?
What's that?
So Polaris must be traveling millions of miles through space back and forth to maintain perfect alignment with our measly wobbly North Pole.
No, John. No, it's millions and hundreds of millions of miles away. First of all, it's
So
not
that's
nearby.
that's pretty perfect alignment, isn't it?
No, it's not perfect alignment. I already told you that 5,000 years ago it wasn't aligned over the North Pole at all. The Earth's spin axis is wobbling in space.
So
We've
you don't
gone through
agree
John.
that for that thing to be so many hundreds of, however billions of miles away, that there's not a very, very nicely perfect alignment with our North Pole for it to stay directly above it all year long?
John, the Earth is a gyroscope. Its axis is precisely fixed on
the North Pole.
celestial sphere. Not on the North Pole. The North Pole
on the
is
North
your
Pole, on the
construct.
North Pole star, the North Pole, pole star.
John, Polaris just happens to be lined up on our North Pole.
You just
direction.
you
And
just have never
26,000 years from
about
now,
it.
it will be
Please
lined up
laugh.
again.
It's
So you're
laughable.
not listening to me, John. You're really you're. The trouble, John, is you don't seem to understand basic, simple physical facts, which have been proven over centuries of thought and reason and measurement. And what you're talking about has nothing to do with measurement.
No, what
So,
you're talking about has to do with nothing to do with reality, sir.
Oh, I see. Well, it's just because you are living in you're back in the age of
There's
Ptolemy.
There's no way
1,000 years ago.
our Polaris could maintain any alignment with our
Yes,
measly
there is, John.
North Pole. No, sir.
It's all something that is very simple physics,
It is
and I guess
only
I just
possible in
can't
your mind.
convey it to you because you've obviously never taken any basic science.
John also asked, why don't we have equal 12-hour days and nights all year round?
And the answer is because we're living on a spinning globe. And we have the Earth's axis, this thing that John doesn't seem to understand, that we're pointed fixed in space on the celestial sphere, pointing just happened by pure happenstance to be pointing close to, but not precisely at, the direction of a star that we call Polaris. So because the Earth's axis is tilted with respect to our orbit around the sun, the days and nights, length of the day and the length of the night change. This is all basic sixth grade general science that John should have learned. I hope he did.
You haven't thought it. You haven't thought it through, Doctor. Because if you look at
I teach this to my students. So
you've misled a lot of people, because on an Earth that is spinning a constant speed, you should have equal 12-hour days and nights. Sitting at the same.
No, that's only John. Look, it's because you don't understand simple geometry. That would only be true, John, if the Earth's spin axis were perpendicular to its orbit around the sun. Then we would have equal days and nights. Correct. But it's not. The Earth is tilted.
The tilt has
That's
nothing
why
to do
we
with
have
Earth.
seasons, John. That's why we have winter in
The
the
reason
north.
we have seasons is because
At the opposite time that
sun
sun
is
is in the southern hemisphere. These are all basic
the
facts.
sun is traveling in an oscillating flat circle around the magnetic center, which is fixed on our North Pole.
See, you what you've done is you have this hopelessly contrived, complicated wheels within wheels picture, which
No.
is what Ptolemy and the ancients thought was going on because there was no understanding of physical reality. We now have something that we understand perfectly, and we teach it to our sixth graders, and you should have learned this way back when. And it
Oh, I
doesn't
learned all
require
of the lies,
magnetic
Doctor. I know.
anomalies and
Trust me, I know
all
all
these
of the lies.
complicated
All of them.
machines. So what I'm trying to convince you of is that the beauty of science and that we have a really complete understanding of this is a remarkable intellectual achievement. There's no
What you
fakery.
what you
NASA's
call
not pulling
science, with
money.
all due respect, is not science. What you call science is looking at pretty pictures and trumping what is measurable and
No, no.
verifiable.
Pretty pictures are just a wonderful byproduct. What I call science is truth and understanding reality. What you are doing is inventing a reality which goes back to the, as I keep saying, the sort of Ptolemaic view, wheels with
sir.
wheels,
No, sir.
magnetic anomalies, all of these things that are contrived realities to make things consistent.
The
with what we
contrived
observe.
falsity is the globe model, and anybody can verify that we indeed live on a flat, stationary plane.
Well,
but until
I
you
think we've
can break the programming-
I think we've gone as far as we can go because you're.
Oh, I've
simply
still
not
got
listening.
9 more points to make, but yeah, if you want to
Well,
go.
as I told Art, this debate is interesting. It's been fun, and I respect your point of view. I'm not trying to put you down, but what I've tried to convince you of over the last hour and a half is that the real picture that all the rest of the world believes, I think you're in a very small minority, as I'm sure you must realize, and for some reason I'm still fascinated to think about or understand whatever led you to adopt this view on such a recent time scale as 6 months ago. There must have been some remarkable thing that happened.
Yeah,
But
there was. And again, I was simply compelled to look at the evidence and scrutinize both models and draw
Okay.
rational, verifiable conclusions. And I wish
Okay.
you would do the same thing.
Okay, well, John, this is what I do every day. I do verifiable models and
Well, by saying that gravity is a proved fact, you are not a scientist, sir.
Oh,
That's
John,
unproven.
John, listen. This gets to be the point where it's just not useful to discuss. It's
Well-
not just me thinking that gravity is a proven fact. This goes back to
Gravity
all
is
of physics.
thoroughly
And so I refuse to. There are points at which I'm sorry.
All
I
right,
will
this
get
is that
impatient.
point. So, you know what, Doctor? I'm going to
and
thank.
so-
Hold on, John. Hold on. Doctor, I'm going to thank you for being here. I'm going to invite you back so we can do a show on everything that you do know about. And
I think I know everything about what this fellow John, whoever is talking about, but I find it very disappointing that somebody who clearly can at least articulate,
Yes.
but not describe very accurately even his theory, although I think I see the broad picture of it. I think just very unfortunate that one can come to such a limited view and perspective of what the real world is.
The
When
irony
one
of
has-
that statement
When
is
one
astounding.
has the natural beauty of what the real world is to understand it right at your fingertips. It's what all of science is all about. You can't just throw it out the window.
No.
And go
cannot.
back
You
to
can't-
this
you can't throw
early
out-
primitive way of thinking that we must be on a flat Earth.
It's not primitive. It's
Well,
of course
for
is.
it to be true, for what John says to be true, so much has to be thrown out the window, and the rest of it has to be just labeled fake.
Yeah. Well,
No, I don't
Yeah.
think everything has to be labeled fake. I think that we've all been misled as an entire species to one specific end, which is to essentially trick us into believing we live on a finite enclosed system with no escape. And they've done a great job of it because even the rational, skeptical, scientific, very brilliant minds of the world are trapped in a matrix of a globe model. And until you can just really
why do you?
scrutinize-
So, John, why do you suppose millions of people, scientifically educated people, many millions, hundreds of millions, really, could all be so completely trapped in this totally false view?
Because it's all
And
done
why?
since we've
It's the
been
same
very
question.
young. Since we've been very young, it's drilled into our paradigm, and we never ever question it. That's why I'm telling you.
Oh, this is what science is all about: questioning,
No,
questioning,
it isn't,
questioning.
sir, because
No,
I've already proved to you in this conversation that the world is flat and stationary.
no,
But
you have not, John.
but then
You
you
may
point to
think
the
you
pretty
have,
pictures of
but
Hubble.
your proof is demonstrably wrong, and I'm not going to go back over it. I've pointed out to you
No, you've glossed it.
ways that your so-called proof is ridiculous. We can measure
You haven't
distances.
even
We know
considered.
that we're living on a spherical surface. So
But we're not.
we're not going to go back over this again. This is where we started an hour and a half ago.
Sure.
So again, the tragedy is you're just denying intellectual history and thinking. It has nothing to do with being led astray. It's the opposite. It's the exact opposite. What science does is to confront the very primitive ways we could only understand our world back in prehistoric times. What you're proposing is, of course, exactly what everybody thought more or less must be the case. We're on a flat Earth. It began as on the back of a turtle or God knows what. All of this has taken over tens of thousands of years, but really only over the last 500 years, 2,000 years, again, going back to the Greeks, to finally be clarified. And there's no fakery or, misleading thing going on, but which is, of course, what you require to make your theory stand up in light of all the evidence. And when you say
Well,
that
actually,
NASA
the
is
simple, verifiable truth
reveals what
has nothing to do with the globe. The globe is demonstrably false, and in fact, it's preposterous if you scrutinize it.
Okay, at that point, John, I'm sorry, I'm going to sign off because I've tried to make you aware of the beauty of
No,
science.
you've regurgitated
Apparently
the
it's not
programming is all you've done.
Well, I think he's done a great job. Doctor, I want to have you back and talk about black holes, pulsars, all kinds of good things.
Okay, well, we'll be happy to do that at some point. But this is quite disappointing to see that there could still be this view out there amongst a small segment of society. I know from what little I've heard about this group, but it just shows that our whole education system still has a ways to go. Although on the whole, it is doing well because most people, everybody, I would say, has generally been taught and not felt that they've been brainwashed or whatever John may be suggesting into some very peculiar view, but instead is the
In a world
learning
full of lies,
of the
truth is
general
peculiar,
scientific
isn't it?
realm is there for the most part.
All right,
So-
Doctor, I'm going to break it off with you and say thank you, and I want to have you back and talk about all the other stuff, if we can do that.
Okay.
All right, Doctor.
Okay.
Thank you so very much.
Yep. You're very welcome.
All right. So, John, we've still got you and time for a final statement from you, John.
Sure. And, I appreciate you having me on, Art. It's been a real honor. I'm flattered. I disagree with the doctor, and I think he's certainly a very smart, intelligent person. But I really have looked at this. I've thought about it. I wouldn't be out here shouting from the rooftops that I believe that we live on a flat, stationary plane unless I had scrutinized it, verified it. And unfortunately, even the scientific people of the world are simply unable to even just hypothesize that we live on anything but a globe. And in fact, if you do look at the evidence and scrutinize it and certain things we can verify and prove, the globe Earth model, the heliocentric model, is indeed wrong.
Okay. Well, again, from my point of view, as I listened, and I wouldn't have missed this for all the world, so many things have to either be wrong or fake or just so far out for anybody to grasp what it is that you've been saying. But nevertheless, listen, I appreciate your being here tonight. I appreciate your making the argument. People who have never heard this argument made before probably have their chins on their chests. He was pretty smart. He was arguing a lot of points that you had to be reasonably well educated to argue, even if you're wrong. And so the big question is, what happened to John? How could he so fervently suddenly believe what he apparently believes. I blew right through a break so we wouldn't have to stop and we could get the full 90 minutes in. And I'm telling you right now, you've got to point this 90 minutes of radio out to somebody you know. We're going to open lines. And here are the numbers. The public number is area code, that was some hour and a half, area code 952-225-5278. 952-225-5278. Now, we also have Skype, and I invite you to call us for free from virtually anywhere in the world by Skype. North America, America, and Canada can call by calling us at MITD 51. That's, MITD, as in midnight in the desert, 51. People outside the United States and Canada can call by dialing MITD 55. MITD 55. Best way to call, so everybody loves your call because you'll sound great. If you've got an iPhone 6 or an Android of some sort, put these in so you can dial anytime you want, because you never know when you're going to hear something that so frustrates you that if you don't call, you'll explode. The last 90 minutes were, frankly, a lot like that in every way. Evan, I'm going to put you on the air on Skype. Hello.
Hi, Art. How are you doing this evening?
Well, I'm recovering.
Recovering, yes. Yeah. Well, I got to ask you, is that guy actually for real?
Oh, no doubt about it. I just finished saying it. John was obviously a bright guy. Mm-hmm. And something happened to him. I mean, like a science teacher smacked him with something hard, or I don't know what happened.
Opened his mind too much, it fell out.
I don't know.
Sorry, yeah. I was just going to relay an experience, actually. The city I live in here, I don't know if you're aware of the phenomenon or not, but the loud booms?
Oh, yes.
You know what I'm talking about? We in here, I live in Calgary, Alberta. In the particular neighborhood I'm in, there has been for about the past 6 years now, probably about at least a couple of times a day, a series of loud booms going off.
Man, we're hearing all about it.
Yeah, no, but it's been they're doing local research into it as well, actually. They put some research into it. If anyone wants to Google Ranchlands Calgary noise, there's a study they've been doing on it. In 6 years, they still can't figure out what's causing it.
No idea? No theories?
Not at all. They involve the local university. Everything I honestly couldn't tell you.
Well, there are mysteries within science, and this clearly is one of them. A lot of people think they're connected to earthquakes. How about that one?
Yeah, well, it's food for thought anyways. Thank you very much for taking my call. Pleasure to speak to you.
Well, thank you for making it. And I want to report very quickly before we move on something that we've been talking about for years. HAARP. Do you know about HAARP? The High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program? Guess what, folks? It's going to transfer from military into academic hands next month. That's right. The military is giving up HAARP. After a swell of support last year from the scientific community and intervention by Alaska versus Senator Lisa Murkowski, plus a lot of uncertainty before that, the U.S. Air Force laid its plans to shutter the ultra-high-power HAARP and demolish it. Now, the University of Alaska Fairbanks has won a bid to assume ownership of the facility near Gakona. That's going to happen on August 11. Now, I'm a ham operator, and a lot of ham operators think that our government, while it had HAARP in its hands, screwed up our ionosphere big time. So now it's going to pass, and actually the ARRL, the organization that represents amateur radio, David Sumner, has written the U.S. Secretary of Defense to urge that HAARP be maintained in its current condition until the UAF Geophysical Institute's proposal process has been completed by the National Science Foundation. He says most of our 164,000 members employ ionospheric propagation of HF radio signals for their communications and technical investigations. Sumner told then Defense Secretary Hagel, ionospheric research, therefore, has great significance and importance to us. And as ham operators, certainly the ionosphere is very, very important. But frankly, Mr. Sumner, a lot of the hams out here think that they really screwed it up. And if there's any hams out there who want to comment on that, you're welcome to. So HAARP passes from government hands into private hands. Then what? Well, because I blew a break in in the last half hour on purpose, and I mean blew it. In fact, we blew everything right on through the roof. We'll take that break now. What you've been hearing, you're certainly welcome to make that. We've got plenty of people wanting to say something, that's for sure. Let's go to Tulsa, Oklahoma on the phones. Hi, you're on the air.
Hi, Art. First-time caller, long-time listener. I just wanted to say two things. One, I absolutely love the doctor, and I would be very sad if we were unable to see him again. He was an excellent guest, and I really enjoyed hearing him, and I really hope we get to hear him talk about deep space pulsars and black holes and everything else.
Sure. And he will come back. He will. We talked about that. He knew what he was facing tonight. I think, he deserves a gold star for even facing off like this on the subject.
Yes, sir. Yep. So the other thing was for John. I don't know if he's still on the line with us.
No, I didn't think that would be fair.
Okay. Yeah. So the deal I would say for him, because he was wondering about airplanes traveling on the globe.
Oh yes.
One direction, the other direction, and what I would do, I'd say for him a simple experiment he can do to observe the principles himself would be to set in his vehicle and accelerate to whatever the speed limit is in his area. We'll say 65 miles an hour. Set cruise control. Take a pencil or a pen and hold it out and drop it. Now, according to what he's thinking, the pen or pencil should fly right straight to the back of the vehicle, not fall down. Because when he realizes that that pen is moving at whatever speed the vehicle is moving, it should be easier in his mind to realize, okay, the entire globe is spinning. Mm-hmm. So everything on the globe is spinning at that rate, and everything else is relative to that. And it would be a nice way to illustrate that. I had to explain this to a kid recently, and I actually went through the same thing, but not for flat Earth reasons. The kid was wondering why, if I dropped something, I dropped my book bag on the school bus and it didn't fly. Why not?
Yeah.
Great kid question.
I wonder how many people embrace. I mean, clearly John truly embraced it. Clearly John was not a dunce. He was a pretty bright guy. So you're only left wondering what happened to John.
Well, some of it might just be isolating yourself from other views, because he was really, I hate to say closed-minded, but he immediately shut down anything about math, science, demonstrable measurements, anything from NASA was all a lie.
All fakes.
Once you isolate yourself, I mean, that does it.
Well, it tells us something about, I don't know what it tells us. It's confusing to me, because on the one hand, he's a bright guy. Even to sit and be able to argue with the doctor, you could tell he was a bright guy, but all twisted up in a way that I can't fathom.
And as I'm not sure how old he was, but I assume we're probably in the same generation.
Sounds like.
I love space, and I'm jealous of your generation. You guys got to see the moonwalk. We have nothing. We shut down our space program. It's a shame. It's a shame.
Well, let me be John for a second. Of course we shut it down. We couldn't keep up that lie for that long.
Oh, yeah. I'll clear the line so you can take the next caller, but I appreciate it, Art. It's been a great show.
Thank you very much for calling, and take care. I had to bunch the brakes up a little bit here. Let's go to, I don't know, somewhere in California, I think, on the phone. Hi, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi, Art. I'm debating whether to talk about this previous segment or not, because there's so much fertile ground to plow.
Oh, I know.
But instead, I think I'll thank you very much for having Preston Bennett on last week. He cleared something up for me that I've been wondering about for like more than 30 years. And if he's correct, what I had more than 30 years ago was an out-of-body experience, but it involved witnessing something from a past life. And that something that I witnessed was my being executed in an electric chair.
Oh, my.
Yeah, and I figure it was the 30s, maybe the late 20s, or in the 30s, or possibly the 1940s.
What had you done?
I don't know. Whatever it was bad enough to be executed.
Well, yeah.
And I witnessed the hood going over the face from my perspective, and I experienced the jolt of the electricity.
So how was it?
Well, it was quick. I will tell you, it was quick.
Well, in a lot of executions, it's not. If they don't get everything just right, they've had guys' heads catch on fire. It's awful.
Oh, I know. But in my case, it was
quick.
Mercifully brief.
Huh.
And you had mentioned one of your hang-ups is being afraid. And I tend to think that whatever fear you're experiencing in that sort of experience of OBE is fear that you're bringing with you.
Oh,
and
yes.
just to tell you that there's really nothing there that can harm you other than what you bring along with you to freak you out.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the call. I really
Right.
appreciate it. Right. Take care. Let's see. Okay. Let's, well, no, let me talk about that fear. A million times I've tried to tell myself, don't be afraid when these things happen. But going back to my most recent experience, the shadow guy, didn't work at all. Absolutely didn't work at all. From the first second I saw him, I was absolutely terrified. So somebody's going to have to teach me how, when these things occur, how when a giant triangle appears over you or a shadow guy next to you, you don't be afraid. Instead, you relax and you sort of white light yourself, I think people say, and, all the rest of it. Let me go overseas somewhere. Will, you're on the air. Hello.
Bell.
Yes, hello.
Hey, how are you going, mate?
I'm doing well. Sounds Aussie to me.
Very Aussie.
Where are you?
Newcastle in Australia, East Coast.
Good to have you.
Yeah, good to be on. I've followed you for years and years, and yeah, great to get through.
Seems to me like people in Australia are beginning to discover us big time.
Yeah, I tell all my friends. So I've got a few people tuning in.
All right. Hi, people.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, the flat Earth stuff from the first part of the show.
Right.
Yeah, I started seeing videos and stuff on Facebook and YouTube about 12 months ago and thought it was absolutely ludicrous. And then I watched them. They're, a couple of hours long and did my own due diligence. And what I found out isn't too far from what Jay was talking about.
I've got you. Another flat earther.
Another flat earther.
Yes. Well, we need to explore how this happened to you. You were exposed, obviously, to flat earth stuff, propaganda, and somehow you became converted. How long a process was that?
Probably about 6 weeks of really scratching my head, and I spend a lot of time outside at night. And
you didn't like scratch it raw or anything, did you? I mean, bleeding, possibly a head injury.
No.
You sure?
No head injury.
Look here. We're at a break point. I'm going to hold you over. All right? Yep. We've got to explore this. I've got to try to understand. There's got to be. And what astounds me about the flat earthers is they seem otherwise like pretty bright people. So how does that happen, Will?
I don't know. I just like I said before the break, I spent a lot of time outside at night, and yeah, just what I was seeing and staring at just didn't quite add up, and I just started looking for answers why, because the answers that we're told in school and stuff just didn't make sense to me.
Do you actually think our sun is only 3,000 miles above us?
Still undecided on how far the sun is away, but
it has to be. I mean, to be really a flat earther, that sun has to be sitting out there 3,000 miles, or it doesn't work.
I'm not I wouldn't go preaching on people's doorsteps about it, but it just made a lot more sense to me than the globe. Like the evidence they put forward is quite good.
Well, but again, if you want it to be true, then the sun has to be only 3,000 miles up.
That may be so. Like he said, you'd have to go up and have a look. There's just no real way to tell from down here.
Well, do you agree with John that all of the NASA stuff, all of the stuff we know about, is fake?
That's a big question. Yes and no, because last night's show had a lot of stuff to do with.
It did.
They went there, but not the way that we know. So
right,
yeah.
Right. But still, even if we went, no matter which way we went, the slow way or the really fast way, it's still 250,000 miles away to the moon. That is.
Yeah.
And then there's that 93 million miles to the sun. So, I mean, think about it. We would have passed the sun on the way to the moon long since.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. But just something to think about is when you're looking at a moon at night, actually, when the moon's still up in the day. So you've just say there's a full moon, but you can still see it in daylight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just say 12 o'clock in the day, the sun's above the moon's below the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Still a full moon, you can still see it in broad daylight, yet the sun should be off behind the moon, and we're still getting the same image of the moon, same side lit up.
But doesn't the moon block the sun, and we call that an eclipse?
That's what I just can't work out. I can't justify in my head how it's our globe is the reason we have the moon changes.
So it's like they're in Australia. Well, you're not down under. You're just over.
Just over, yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, Will, thank you for the call. I really appreciate it. I'm just astounded. Thank you very much. I really am astounded. I mean, isn't it a thing in itself that that people believe as they do? Isn't it absolutely astounding to listen to this? And these are otherwise, it would seem, pretty bright people. Jordan on Skype, you're on the air. Hello.
Yeah, probably when.
Jordan, you're breaking up on me, buddy.
Hey, is it better now?
A little.
Sorry, I got you on Skype here. Is it better?
It is better, yes. Go ahead. Let's see if we can do it.
Well, one thing I wanted to say is I'm not debating whether we landed on the moon or not, but I kind of go with the theory of where we went there, but we ended up finding something. We ended up taking stuff back.
Rocks.
And I think that, we ended up, I don't know if we took rocks back. They might be alive. That was just a joke. But
good.
But I also want to hit on one more thing. I wanted to tell you one thing that I listened back in the day when you were you had the pilot on the phone, and he had captured a giant with the military, and they were transporting. He was transporting a giant. I just wanted to see if you could touch basis on that and kind of recreate that moment.
I'm not sure what moment you're talking about. We had a pilot on the show who flew into Area 51. But I don't remember a pilot with a giant.
Maybe it was the Area 51 one, and then you had lost connection with him.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. That was even put into a song by Tool. I mean, it's legend at this point.
I just said, I'm a young buck. What do you say?
Well, there's nothing to say. Thank you very much for the call. It was just astounding radio. What happened to him? I don't know. I'm sorry. I haven't heard. Overseas, somewhere, you're on the air.
Hi, how's it going tonight? Thanks for having the debate. I love the subject. My name is Ernest. I am a flat earther.
Another one. Ernest, welcome to the program. Where are you, Ernest?
Well, right now I'm in the Boston area. I just want to say I make more money probably than most of your callers.
Ernest, this is our overseas line, buddy. So no matter how much money you make, if you're in Boston, you can't call on this line.
I'm sorry. You don't post where the call-in information is. Can you give me the...
It's at artbell.com.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you very much. And call me over there and we'll talk. That line is restricted for people outside of North America That means America and Canada in this case. So if you're outside America and Canada, it's Skype at MITD55. MITD55. Let's go then. Where? I don't know. Let's try Chris on Skype. Hello, Chris. I think I tried Chris on Skype. Did I do it wrong? No, I didn't. Chris, are you there? Apparently not. Well, let me try it once more. Is this Chris? Hello, Chris.
Hello?
Turn your radio off, please.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll hold while you turn off your radio.
Thank you.
And you're rustling around too. Hold good and still for me.
Hello, Art.
Yes, go right ahead, Chris, and turn off your radio, please.
It is off.
Okay.
So I'm talking to Art Bell.
You are.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you're back, Art.
Thank you.
It's been a long haul, but we've all been waiting, and we're thrilled you're back.
Thank you.
So I did. I just wanted to thank you also for bringing the GIS people back.
Yet to come.
On the 20th, right?
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that. I hope they have some nice new juicy EVPs for us all.
I hope.
Yeah, they kind of that show sort of launched myself and my wife into our little amateur ghost hunting, and had a couple things. Finally got to feel what it's like to have the hair on the back of your neck come up, and I was doing an investigation in Fairfax, an old building, well, several. One was it was a tuberculosis hospital, and a refugee camp for 1906 earthquake victims, and nothing really significant happened that we felt or saw, but the last night was pretty strange. Retrieving my camera at 2 a.m. in the morning in a dark bathroom, I go to reach for my tripod, and I hear, hey, like you stumbled over someone in an alley or something, but no one there. Quite startling.
Well, do you have any proof, photographic, audio?
I got one apparition image that came after what we thought we heard a woman's voice, and we got what looked like a shooting star on a video camera in the house.
Okay, if I give you an address, can you email that to me?
Absolutely.
All right, here it is, artbell@artbell.com. And this goes for everybody. That's my email address. If you want to get a photograph to me, then artbell@artbell.com. If you want to get somebody on the show, don't email me. Email my producer. That would be producer@artbell.com. And I give these out so that I don't have to do it all the time. Otherwise, I have to keep emailing people back who are suggesting people, and I appreciate that. Really, truly, I do. Whenever you can suggest somebody for the show, happy to have them on. But please, by all means, send it to producer@artbell.com. Let's go to Joshua somewhere. Hi, Joshua.
Hi, Israel.
I beg pardon?
I'm in Israel.
You're in Israel?
Yes.
Hey,
yes,
you're my first caller from Israel, Joshua. Welcome.
Yeah. So I was just wondering about this whole flat Earth thing. I've traveled a lot. I'm born in the United States. One time I flew to Israel. I flew a very northerly route. It was the middle of summer. I was looking out the window and I was seeing snow.
Mm-hmm.
And another time it took a more equatorial route with a couple stopovers. And I don't see how going all of these different directions would make sense if the Earth wasn't round.
Well, I tried to point that out to John. And I boiled it down to mileage. You can shorten up the trip in actual measurable miles by doing the circle route, right?
Right.
That means it's a big ball.
Right. Has anybody ever, offered to fund a flat Earth conference, maybe in the lounge area of a 747 while it flew around the world? Let them actually see it?
I don't think so, but it's not a half bad idea.
They seem like intelligent, very scientifically minded people who just doubt the evidence they see in books. Maybe if we get them all on a plane, give them their own compasses so they don't have to trust the equipment in the cockpit
But
and
Joshua,
fly it in one direction until it can land at the same place it took off.
I know, but Joshua, they have to throw away so much. I mean, so much has to be fake for what they believe to be true. Our sun has to be 3,000 miles up for what they believe to be true. And you're right. I mean, they sound intelligent otherwise, and so it's a mystery to me. It's honestly a mystery.
I think, and it seems that there are a lot of flat earthers listening this morning. I suggest that one of them, who's willing to go out on a limb, try to crowdfund a meeting of the Flat Earth Society, and actually publish the results. Do this, try this, see if they fly around the world or see if they find the edge. Because I'm sure the rest of the scientific community would be very, very interested in a well-documented discovery of the edge of the world. We'd all love to see that.
I guess I don't want to stand right there, but yeah, I'd like to see it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Art.
Joshua, thank you for calling. Israel, that's the first call from Israel. And again, outside North America, it's MITD55, MITD55. Let's try the phones. Foley, Alabama. Hello.
Oh, yeah, this is Rex, Art. So
Hey,
glad
howdy.
to find you back again.
Yes, sir. I'm glad you found. How did you find me, actually?
Well, I'll tell you, I was scanning my shortwave radio, doing a third shift, and I said, this can't be true. And I listened to the program. I became so overwhelmed with emotion. When I realized it was you, street lights began to flicker on and off around me. It was incredible.
That's a great way to have found me. And we are on shortwave, like I think 2 or 3 different stations. So you could find us around the dial. And the funny thing about shortwave is so many of the countries that used to broadcast shortwave have stopped because of the cost involved and other reasons, that there's not much on shortwave worth listening to anymore. So I guess we sort of stand out.
You do, and like I said, I felt like I found a lost brother, and I want to thank you for coming back on the airways. I have a bit of scientific, intriguing information that you may find innovative.
Okay.
Now, our solar technology right now, even on the spacecraft the most advanced solar technology, it's still not up in the upper percentage of efficiency, and especially the stuff you put on the roof of your house. But what if you could create a 100% efficient photoelectric cell that would actually produce a kilowatt of electricity over 1 square meter? The only way to do that, Art, is to embed or embody alpha or beta particle in the selenium to cause the photoelectrons being thrown off, to do that at a faster rate. And if you could create a 100% efficient photocell, then that could accompany your space flight. So even if you're out there, even the Oort cloud, you're going to be able to power your spacecraft. Now, there's a doctor that worked at Los Alamos, and I won't mention his name, but he's from Dallas. He's no longer with us. He's the one who came up with these calculations about this 100% efficient photocell. And if you could do that, and he also introduced an intriguing method of traveling through the universe.
All right, one thing at a time. If you could produce such a solar device, you would be rich beyond belief. The Arabs would be after you. You'd be in all kinds of trouble with even the oil companies here. So if you,
right.
Yeah, I am right. So if you've got something like that, buy a gun.
Well, Art, that brings me to a very paranoid feeling, and I have these equations in front of me right now. And,
all right. Well, I'm sorry. We don't have time for the equations, but feel free to email them to me. Be happy to take a look. In the meantime, buy a gun. If you've really got that, they're going to get you. From the high desert, the great American Southwest, this is Midnight in the Desert, rocking in the nighttime. If you want us on a radio station in your area, we're not adverse to it, even though this show is designed to be an internet radio program. It plays just fine on radio stations, and we keep welcoming new ones. So what you would do is call a station in your area, preferably one that doesn't carry, the other one, that other show, and tell them you would like to get on and prove to them that they can actually be number one. Let us go to Michelle. I think it's Michelle's. Where are you, Michelle?
Hi, Howard. I'm in Japan.
You're in Japan.
And,
where? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
where in
my
Japan?
signal's not very good because I'm at work.
Oh, that's okay. I hear you fine. I would say Ohio gozaimasu. What part of Japan, Michelle?
Shizuoka.
Okay, excellent. Well, welcome.
Mm-hmm. Near Fuji. So.
Right.
So it's great to hear you again. I've been dying to hear radio like that again. It's summer, so I don't have anything to do at my job, so I tuned in. First time I've gotten to tune into you again, and man, that was some interview, huh?
Oh yes. We're here every night, Monday through Friday, here in the U.S.
Great. So the thing is, when I came to Japan, we did the circle thing you're talking about. I mean, we went way up north and then back down.
Sure you
and
did.
I could see it all because I had the window seat, and I can't. I mean, I get that you can make that kind of a theory, but there's so much evidence that he just didn't want to listen to, and that's what bugged me.
Well, what bothered me, Michelle, honestly, is that both of these guys that we've had now sounded like otherwise, frankly, bright people, sort of inexplicably going down this wrong highway.
I've been on the internet and on social media for so long that kind of stuff doesn't faze me anymore.
Really?
There is no dearth of people out there who will get something in their head, and no matter how intelligent they are, they will refuse to change what it is they believe and will just completely discount. I mean, you can see it everywhere.
But even up against absolute, even up against absolute scientific fact.
Oh yeah.
Well, Michelle, I'm saying.
Welcome to humanity, right?
I guess. So in a sense, that was radio gold, because never has an academic like that man sustained 90 minutes of what he did.
That's true. I have to give him a massive amount of credit for actually sitting there and being willing to keep that going for that long.
That's right.
And not just lose it and give up.
By the way, are you worried about Fuji blowing up?
No, not really. It's kind of one of those things that's in the back of your mind, but it's, I'm about, 30 miles away. So.
So you must see it real well.
Oh, yeah. You can see it right out the window here where I'm at. I've got some gorgeous, I know I email you one of the pictures I took from my apartment one day.
I would love it.
I will do that. I will send that to you.
I'm so glad you found us.
Great to hear you again.
Listen, I am curious. How did you find us all the way over in Japan?
Actually, I clicked on a link on Facebook about something today, and then it showed me a one of those related article things about you starting up this new show, and I immediately freaked out because I listen to you online with old shows and stuff all the time, constantly.
Well,
but hearing something new, I was like, well, immediately tell me what it is.
Do me a friend and do me a favor and tell your friends.
I will definitely do that.
That'd be like doing me a friend. All right. Thank you very, very much for calling, and take care. All the way from Japan. Wow. Okay. It's hard to know where to go, but Scott is my guy, and that's where I'm going. Scott, hi. Hello, Scott.
Art?
Yes.
Hey, this is Don. Actually, I'm using Scott's computer.
I'm sure you asked Scott for permission, right?
Yeah, he's letting me use his Skype right now.
That's good. All right.
We're both listening to you on this flat Earth thing tonight, and I just wanted to put my 2 cents in on this. I did a lot of sort of, I guess, just YouTube investigation is what you call it, just sitting around watching YouTube videos about this flat Earth thing a couple of months ago.
Yes.
And what this really seems like to me and to a few other people that agreed in comments was this is a PSYOP thing. This is something designed to muddy the waters, to get people thinking in a certain way, I think.
Toward what end?
I don't really know. That's what's interesting. I think the question should be not is the Earth flat, but why are you telling us the Earth is flat, and who's paying you to do it?
Oh, so you
see what I mean?
Well, kind of, yes. But again, to what end could you even imagine?
Well, looking deeper on the wiki page of Modern Flat Earth Societies, all of this is really based on a couple of verses from the Bible.
Really?
Yeah.
And
I don't know specifically which one.
Can you paraphrase?
Basically, I have to look up that wiki page again, but
okay. I wonder where in the Bible it leads us toward believing that.
Well, what it leads me to believe is this is like a creationist agenda that they're trying to push.
Now, you might be onto something there.
You see what I'm saying?
Sure. You might be onto something there. A lot of creationists believe the Earth is very young and that man has only been here for,
6,500 years.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And that might fit in with the sun only being, 3,000 miles away?
Right. And they talk about, I think the other 9 points that John didn't get to tonight, some of those points were the idea of the firmament above, being an ice dome above us, the idea of Antarctica being surrounding all of the continents, and that Admiral Byrd could never get past, these certain points in Antarctica. And there's all these mysteries about Antarctica and what it is. And
there were more points. You're right. We didn't get to all of those, but
a lot of it seems compelling. But the whole thing, it just seems like this creationist agenda, like they're trying to push for whatever reason, and it seems like a disinformation thing to muddy the waters for other, to throw it in the bucket with other sort of fringe ideas.
Well, the only place where they almost had me was the airplane going one direction and the airplane going the other direction.
Right, that's a good one.
I had to think about that a little bit. I'm still not
from continent to continent.
I'm still not sure about that one. Otherwise, no, I didn't buy any of it. That one I'm going to have to give a little thought. That it seemed like that might have made a little sense to me. But I mean, after all, the Earth is turning in one direction, the plane going in the other direction.
Oh, there was another point about you couldn't fly a plane. You couldn't get a flight from, say, South America to South Africa, or from South Africa to Australia. You would always have to go to the Northern Hemisphere and connect somewhere in the Northern Hemisphere, like Dubai or in the UK, and then fly to your location in the Southern Hemisphere. And then if you looked at it on the flat Earth map, it would make sense because it would go in a straight line. But on the spherical map, on the globe, it has to sort of go zigzag up and down up to the Northern Hemisphere, and that seemed a bit odd.
All right.
But just a few more things I thought I'd throw in there for conversation.
Look, I appreciate it. Remember the Screaming Lady commercial? People went berserk over the Screaming Lady commercial. Oh, my God, I'm going to cancel. How can you have that on? I got email after email after email. You wouldn't believe it. And so they rotated, and the Screaming Lady came out. A day or two passed, and then I'm inundated with zillions of emails. I missed the Screaming Lady. What happened to the Screaming Lady? Duncan in New Zealand says, by wormhole, I agree. This is all a psyop with the mass awakening of people occurring. It's just a distraction to stop us looking out into the universe. Frankly, citing business reasons for his anonymity raises some serious red flags with me. Well, I understood it. I understood the reason for his not wanting to reveal his real name. Would you? I mean, he had solid business reasons, I guess. Steve on Skype somewhere. Hi, you're on the air.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, Steve. Get good and close to where the microphone is on your computer, because you sound like you're in a hollow room.
Okay, I'm calling from Germany. I'm ex-military. I used to work on the Persian missiles and stayed over here. Well, I've been listening to your program today. It was really great. This flat Earth thing, I never ever thought the world could be flat. But I also was watching some of these YouTube videos about the flat Earth, and they got some pretty interesting facts that make you go, could it be? So,
well, of those, okay, you watched. I know there are YouTube videos. What is it that impressed you?
well, what impressed me the most is what I think it was a lighthouse. There was a few videos. It was a lighthouse, and they went a few miles away, and they were trying to say, well, if the Earth is really round, a curvature, you shouldn't be able to see the lighthouse anymore at this distance.
Well, Crystal Lighthouse sticks out or up, right? So I guess as you went further and further, more and more of the lighthouse would disappear until finally even the blinking light up top would be gone.
Right, exactly. But it wasn't. It was straight on.
You mean the lighthouse stayed in full view no matter how far you went?
It stayed in full view. And that was the thing that was really impressive to me.
Well, it's impressive, but it's impossible. Huh?
Well, yeah, but I don't want to believe it. I really don't. But I don't know. Have you yourself looked at any of these YouTube videos?
I have. Actually, I have. Yes, and a few of their arguments are kind of interesting. I think I mentioned the airplane, right? The one he made.
Right.
That still is grabbing me a little bit, but the amount of stuff that has to be fake and wrong for it to be true. I mean, the sun 3,000 miles away, really?
No, exactly. Yeah, I know it's not possible, but there's just some things that are really that you scratch your head.
Well, you do.
Yeah, it would be nice if you do another show about this flat Earth thing, and it's good to hear you back on the air. I don't want to waste anybody's time with a more important call than mine.
All right, well, just out of curiosity, though, if you don't mind, how did you hear about us, why are you in Germany?
Well, I used to be in the Army. I worked on the Pershing missiles.
Yes.
And I stayed over here. You know, I met a girl and fell in love. And,
yes.
And I've been listening to Dark Matter for a long time, and I used to listen to what's her name, Carrie Cassadine on Project Camelot, and Stephen Greer. I'm really interested. I've been following this stuff on UFOs.
Oh man, I cannot wait to have Stephen Greer on again. Did you hear the statement I played that Steve Greer made?
No, what was it?
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Seriously? You know what? Stay right where you are. I'm going to turn you down a little bit, and I'm going to play something here that I want you to hear. So let's see. You're in Germany, right? But I've got somebody else over here. Hold on in Germany. Adam, hello.
Hey, Art. I feel like I'm in a time machine listening to your show. It goes so quick. You've got such an interesting and diverse number of guests on there. I wanted to say that I was lucky enough in my work industry to have access to press passes to get into the STS-2 or Space Shuttle launch site.
Yes, sir.
And I was an audio enthusiast, and at the STS-2 launch, I was able to bring in a pair of Electro Voice RE15 mics and a little Nakamichi battery-operated deck.
Mm-hmm.
I have this great recording of STS-2 launch, and when the thing does the roll, as it clears the launch tower, you can hear that. You can hear the fire crackling out of the engines. And now that you've got this great streaming stereo platform, if you'd like, I would be happy to send you a non-compressed copy of that to do with what you will.
I would love it. I would love it. I would love it. I would love it. Send it to artbell@artbell.com.
All right. Any file size limitation on the email server?
It's a good question. I think if it's how big is it? Do you know?
Well, if I send it at like 96 kilobits,
yes,
24, whatever that 2496 stream is, I think it'd probably be about 12 to 15 megabits.
Whew, that might be pushing it. I'd be happier if it was slightly under 10. I'm not sure what limits, if anything, I've got on, but I think it might be around 10.
I'll squeeze it in under that.
All right. Give it a shot, would you?
Got it.
And I'll play it. Yes, and you're right, in stereo. Look, everybody do me a favor. Tomorrow, Bob Crane has these amazing earbuds. When I say amazing, I really mean amazing. I don't know what they're made out of at the end, but they conform to your ear. And when you plug in earbuds to your, I don't know what, your phone or your iPad or whatever, it's like you came into a new universe with this program. It'll sound so good. They're like $9.95, which I think cheats Bob Crane. Call him in the morning. Tell him Art Bell told you to call. Get a pair of those on the way, and then you can review them on the air for me. They're amazing. Call them at 1-800-522-8863. I've done those commercials for years, so I actually know his number. 1-800-522-8863. All right, now, let me see. I'm going to have to manipulate a little bit here, and I'm going to have to clear that, and I'm going to have to bring up the statement by Dr. Greer. This is astounding to me.
Now, I'm going to say something here because this is enough years after it happened.
Stephen Greer.
A few years ago, there was a show called Coast to Coast with Art Bell. And it was on the cover of Time magazine, and I was one of his favorite guests. And when I'd be on that show, it really lit things up at certain agencies. And one time I was on his show, and a few years back, towards the end of his career there, and this issue came up, and I said, well, I have a source high up in SETI that confirms to me that they, in fact, have received interplanetary signals, but in a kind of phased, not normal array. It was kind of a pulsed array, and that it was kept secret and covered up. And the SETI people were furious. Subsequently, Seth Shostak got on the show and just said, well, Dr. Greer knew what he's talking about, and he probably talked to some volunteer computer operator, because we have all this network of volunteers. What Art Bell didn't know, and which Seth Shostak didn't know, and which I'm going to say now because it's enough water gone under the bridge, is that the guy who told me that was the founder of the SETI project and the Drake equation, Dr. Drake. He told me that they had that contact. Moreover, a man who had been one of Carl Sagan's best friends, the best man at his wedding, confirmed it. And he had been present when the WOW signal came in at Harvard.
Okay, so back to Steve in Germany.
Yeah, Art Bell, listen, Stephen Greer, he's a good guy, but after this serious documentary he made, he's I don't trust him anymore. He's looking a little more and more shady to me.
Not to me. I've always trusted him, and you know what? That statement he just made, and he's going to be on the show, and believe me, trust me, when I tell you we're going to have him explain that, and then we're going to have Seth Shostak on, because what he essentially just said is we haven't been told the truth. We've had contact. I mean, that's what the man just said. We've had contact.
Course, well, I believe that. I think everybody believes that.
No, everybody doesn't believe that. We've had Seth on a million times, asked him about contact, and of course he has said that, we have the WOW signal, but Greer was talking about real contact and the fact that it's not known. And so if we've actually had contact, that's big, big news.
Well, yeah, of course that's big news. Are you talking about that the government has had contact, or that city has had contact?
Well, that SETI had contact, and okay. Apparently we didn't know about it. So I'm telling you, that's a blockbuster if true. Listen, I've got to run, but thank you for the call.
When is he coming back? When is this show going to happen?
It'll be, I don't know. He's on our, I don't want to say. We can't talk about our guests for some reason.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks for hearing me out.
And you're very welcome. Happy to do it. Okay. Who is JP? I guess that's right. Is that correct? JP? No? Too bad. All right, JP, you would have been on the air, but I guess you're not going to be unless you're there. One last try. Are you there? Nope. No problem. Probably never. Well, that's not true. I won't say never. We have a restriction against playing tunes prior to 1972 unless they have been remastered. So that's the deal. So I don't want to say never, because they are actually in talks so that the people who had songs that are, prior to 1972 can be played and can be paid for. But right now there's no mechanism to pay for them. So we're stuck. I'm sorry. There's nothing we can do. Hopefully the talks are underway right now. They'll get it straightened out. And then as we can play current commercial music post 72, soon we'll be able to play the stuff prior to 72. I hope that kind of answers your question. Let's go to Charlotte something or another. Hello, on the phone.
Hello, it's Calvin.
Charlottetown, is that it?
Yeah, it's Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island.
Nova Scotia, okay.
Prince Edward Island, actually. It shows up Nova Scotia in the caller ID.
It does, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, proceed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that about John there. He doesn't seem to sound too much older or younger than I am. I just wanted to say, it's kind of almost depressing that we're supposed to be the progressive generation here, and we still got people hung up on whether or not the Earth is flat, which has been disproven thousands of years ago. It's just kind of a bleak thing to think about, and I'm not sure why anybody would ever.
Well, I think what made me feel bleak about it was that John otherwise sounded very bright. And
no, absolutely, right?
It's very concerning to me that he could go down a trail that a bright person shouldn't be able to go down.
No, it's kind of sad almost, and I don't want to belittle the guy because as we've both agreed on, he sounds really smart, but it's just kind of it's I don't know, how do you I don't know, how do you go that way,
I don't know. I'm sorry, I just flat, excuse the word, flat don't know.
Anyway, that's all I just really wanted to say. I think a lot of other people listening tonight probably think the same thing.
Well, thank you for the call, and I'm sure they do. Roy, you're on the air wherever you are.
It is I, J.C. Webster III.
Oh, my God.
You did not...
This is J.C.? That's not J.C. J.C. has not been on his Facebook page in a long time. I hope nothing has happened to J.C. Nothing untoward has occurred to J.C. Anyway, Kurt, your turn. You're on the air.
Well, hello.
Hello.
How are you today?
Mystified, but here.
All right, let me turn this
I
down
should have
so I
said
don't hear you double.
Should have said flat mystified. Anyway.
You know what? He said, I'm flattered to be on your show, and I think he was fooling us. I do. I just had a sense in my gut that he knew that. How in the world can anybody believe that the Earth is still flat? You're going to get in a ship and then you're just going to fall off into where?
Yeah, I think you're wrong, because I think he did honestly believe it. I'm sorry to say. Oh yes, yes.
I can't believe that anybody in 2015 believed that we're on a flat plane. Bubbles, when we blow a bubble, it turns to a sphere. I think the Lord, with his breath, made the planet. So that's a sign that a bubble's not flat. I don't know, just an idea. But I just don't believe that somebody in 2015 believed the Earth flat. Are they nuts or what? Are they in a cult? Or I just don't know.
I don't know.
I'll let you go. You have a good night.
All right.